Crime has always been humanity's shadow, a reflection of what we fear most about ourselves. For every law written, there's someone willing to break it. For every prison built, there's someone too dangerous to contain. But what happens when even the most secure prisons fail? When the criminal mind outsmarts concrete, steel, and human control. That's when places like ADX Florence are born. Not as correctional facilities, but as psychological experiments in control, isolation, and obedience. Buried deep in the Colorado desert, surrounded by miles of barren silence, ADX Florence isn't a prison in the traditional sense. It's a system designed to erase, to strip a man down to nothing but breath and heartbeat. Criminologists call it the clean version of hell. Every inch of it was engineered with one goal, not just to punish, but to extinguish the human mind's need for connection, rebellion, and hope. Inside these walls are the names that once shook nations. Drug lords, terrorists, spies, killers. Men who built empires on fear. Now reduced to silence, so complete that even their thoughts seem to echo back empty. This is not a story about crime. It's a story about what comes after, when justice turns into isolation, and punishment becomes something far worse than death. Welcome to ADX Florence, where America's worst criminals disappear. They call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. But inside these walls, even Alcatraz would have felt merciful. ADX Florence sits in the barren plains of Colorado, cold winds slicing through the desert air. On the horizon, you see nothing but sand, dust, and silence. That's by design, because this is the place where the U.S. government buries men alive. No one screams here. No one speaks. Only the echo of steel doors slamming shut, and the sound of your own breathing to remind you you're still alive. ADX Florence wasn't built to punish the body. It was built to erase the mind. And once you step through those doors, you stop being an inmate. You become a ghost. When the armored convoy arrives, the world outside disappears. The new prisoner, bound in chains from wrist to ankle, is escorted through 10 steel gates, each heavier than the last. Cameras follow every move. No guard walks alone. Every key turned requires 2 people. The smell of bleach hits first, then silence. From that point, your world is an 8 by 10 concrete box. A narrow slit in the wall is your window. Too small to see the sky, too high to reach. Meals slide through a slot. Exercise means pacing inside a steel cage alone for 1 hour a day. And it doesn't matter who you were, cartel boss, terrorist, mob leader, serial killer. Once you arrive at ADX, your identity is reduced to a number and a cell. Inside, men like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 World Trade Center bomber, Robert Hansen, the FBI agent who sold secrets to Russia, and El Chapo Guzman, once the most powerful drug lord on earth, now locked in silence. Every man here once believed he was untouchable, until ADX Florence proved otherwise. His name was Marcus Reed, once the leader of one of the most violent prison gangs in the Midwest. For years, he controlled entire yards, ordered hits, and ran contraband like a business empire. But when a federal officer was killed in an ambush tied to his orders, Marcus's world came crashing down. Now, he's being brought to Florence. The guards don't talk to him. They don't look at him. Because in ADX, connection is the first thing they take away. Marcus's first step inside feels like walking into a vacuum. Soundless, lifeless, endless. The fluorescent lights hum above, buzzing like insects. Every movement is recorded, every blink logged. He's stripped, scanned, and handed a brown jumpsuit with his name replaced by 5 digits. The cell door shuts, and that's it. He's alone. The walls are so white they almost glow. The air smells of paint and sanitizer. His bed is a slab of concrete, his pillow a folded mat. There's no mirror, no clock, and no contact with anyone except the guards through a small slit in the door. Marcus sits on the floor, his mind racing. He thinks about the world outside, the cities, the noise, the power he once had. Now all gone. In here, time doesn't move. It stretches until days and nights feel like one long hallucination. And that's the real punishment, not pain, not fear, but nothingness. He taps the wall once. Silence. Twice. Still silence. He realizes no one can hear him, because the walls are soundproof. At ADX Florence, you don't fight to escape. You fight to remember that you exist. At ADX Florence, time isn't marked by clocks. It's measured by sounds. The hiss of the air vent. The clang of the meal slot. The mechanical voice of a guard announcing, "Stand back from the door." That's the rhythm of existence here. Repetition until reality bends. Marcus Reed's days blend together. Every morning, a light flicks on at 4 a.m. Breakfast comes through the slot, a plastic tray, a carton of milk, 2 slices of bread, and something that used to be scrambled eggs. He eats in silence. He's allowed 1 hour outside. But outside means a cage, a steel rectangle barely big enough to walk in circles. He can see the mountains in the distance, but they might as well be another planet. Inmates here don't see each other. They hear echoes. One man screams in the night for hours, another sings hymns. Some whisper to imaginary friends. And others have already stopped talking altogether. That's what the prison psychologists call cell drift. The slow, irreversible separation of the mind from reality. Even the strongest break eventually. Marcus swore he wouldn't. But after 90 days in silence, even he's starting to talk to the walls. Deep inside Florence is cell block H, known unofficially as Hell's Hallway. This is where the worst of the worst are kept. Men too violent even for a Supermax. Ramzi Youssef is here, the man who tried to bring down the Twin Towers in 1993. He hasn't touched another human being in over 20 years. Next door is Richard Lee McNair, the escape artist who mailed himself out of prison once. Now his mail is opened, read, and destroyed before he even sees it. These are the ghosts of Florence. They breathe, they think, but they no longer live. Guards move like machines, no eye contact, no emotion. Because in Florence, emotion is weakness. Empathy is risk. One guard once said, "You can't look at them as men. You look at them as storms, and your job is just to survive the weather." Marcus begins to understand that. Every sound in this place is engineered not to control the body, but to rewrite the brain. At night, he stares at the ceiling vent, hearing faint tapping. Someone maybe 3 cells away is trying to communicate through Morse code. It's against the rules, but rules mean nothing here. It's the only sign that someone else still exists. Every inmate at ADX Florence is allowed to write letters. But every letter is read, censored, copied, and often never sent. Marcus writes to his mother every Sunday. He never gets a reply. He doesn't know that most of his letters are intercepted, filtered through a security system that scans for hidden codes or messages to old associates. To the outside world, Marcus Reed has vanished. Months pass. His handwriting changes. His sentences become shorter, colder, disconnected. He writes to himself now, confessions, thoughts, questions. In one letter, he writes, "If I ever get out, I don't think I'll know how to talk anymore." That letter never leaves his cell. Down another hallway, cell 234, sits Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, once the untouchable drug lord of Mexico, now the most isolated man in America. Guards rotate routes every week, so no one forms a routine he could exploit. He's watched 24/7 by cameras that even monitor his bathroom. He spends 23 hours a day locked away, the other hour in a cage alone. No contact with other inmates. No visits from his wife. No phone calls with his sons. When his mother died, he found out from a folded note. The guard who handed it didn't say a word. Sometimes the only proof that El Chapo is alive is the sound of his footsteps pacing inside his cell, slow, measured, like a man counting the last moments of his empire. In Florence, legends don't live. They fade quietly. In 2023, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was found dead in his cell. But what few people know is what came before that. Ted had stopped speaking to anyone years before. He would sit on the edge of his concrete bed, staring at the wall for hours, lips moving silently, as if arguing with ghosts. Even his suicide wasn't rebellion. It was relief. The system that was built to contain monsters had turned him into a whisper. And in that silence he disappeared, one of the most brilliant minds of his generation, reduced to an echo in a cell. ADX doesn't just hold criminals. It erases what they were. By month 8, Marcus Reed starts hearing voices. At first, it's faint, like someone whispering his name from behind the vent. Then it grows louder. The psychologist calls it isolation psychosis. Marcus calls it hell. He starts pacing the cell for hours, muttering to himself. He tears pages from his Bible, folding them into shapes, ships, birds, people, anything that moves. He lines them up on the floor and talks to them. Then he crushes them underfoot in rage. One night, he starts screaming. No one answers. In ADX, no one ever answers. Not every inmate at Florence is infamous. Some are forgotten, lost names, lost crimes. One man, known only as Johnson number 48277, has been here for 12 years. When guards speak to him, he doesn't respond. When food slides in, he doesn't move. He just stares, blank, unblinking. Psychologists call it complete dissociated withdrawal. In Florence, it's called the fade. Marcus sees him once, through a security screen, while being escorted. Their eyes meet for half a second. It's like looking at a reflection of his future. Once, whispers spread through the cells, a rumor of a riot. Someone had smuggled a message through the plumbing lines, a plan to attack guards during recreation. But before anything began, the entire block went silent. Security flooded the halls. Doors slammed. Lights stayed on for 72 hours straight. No one confessed. No one talked. But after that, 3 inmates disappeared, transferred, they said. Marcus never saw them again. In Florence, rebellion doesn't happen twice. It disappears before it begins. A year passes. One day, Marcus receives a letter, the first one that ever got through. It's from his sister. The paper smells faintly of perfume and home. She writes about his mother's stroke, about his old neighborhood changing, about how no one says his name anymore. Marcus reads it 50 times. Then he folds it neatly and keeps it under his pillow, his only connection to the world that forgot him. For the first time in months, he cries. And for the first time, a guard pauses, then walks away without saying a word. Sometimes, prisoners find ways to connect, not through words, but through favors. Marcus learns how to trade soap for coffee using coded requests on meal trays. He starts communicating with another inmate, Ghost, a man convicted of killing a federal agent. They never meet. They never speak. But through signals and codes, they share something no one else has, acknowledgement. It's not friendship. It's survival. One night, a pipe bursts. Water floods the corridor. For 2 hours, alarms blare as guards scramble to contain it. Marcus watches the water rise across his floor, mixing with the filth and dust of forgotten years. He presses his hand against the door. Cold metal. Real. Tangible. For once, he feels something other than emptiness. He laughs, quietly, almost like a child. Then the lights go out. And for 30 seconds, ADX Florence drowns in silence and darkness. A rumor spreads, the kind that gives dying men hope. They say Marcus is on a list. A possible transfer to a step-down facility. Lower security. More freedom. Human contact. He doesn't believe it at first. But then a psychologist tells him, if your behavior continues improving, it's possible. Marcus starts keeping his cell spotless. He stops talking to walls. He starts breathing again. Hope, that forbidden word, returns. But Florence has a way of killing hope quietly. 2 months later, Marcus Reed is gone. No one knows where. The guards say transfer. The records say relocation. But the truth, no one can confirm. His cell is cleaned, his letters shredded, his number reassigned. In Florence, men don't die loudly. They just vanish. And that's the greatest punishment of all, not being remembered for your crimes, but being erased so completely that the world forgets you ever existed. ADX Florence stands silent under the Colorado sky, a fortress of concrete, steel, and ghosts. Inside, 400 men breathe in rhythm, unseen and unheard. Each one wants a name that made headlines. Now, just whispers lost to time. They say this place keeps America safe. But ask anyone who's been inside, and they'll tell you, ADX Florence isn't just a prison. It's a place where men disappear, not from the world, but from themselves. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more prison stories.